In this video, we will ask you to consider how we can combine functions together. Sometimes, we may wish to connect functions' outputs together in some mathematical way. Other times, we may wish to use the output of one function as the input into another function. As we think through the problems in Investigation 4 of Module 3, it will be very important for us to draw on the understanding that we have developed thus far about functions. Specifically, we know that functions have an input quantity, whose values we often represent with the letter x. Functions also have an output quantity that we often represent with f of x or g of x. In these situations, the f or the g is the name of the function, and the f of x or the g of x is the value of the output quantity. Finally, functions have a rule that assigns every input quantity in the domain to one specific output quantity. This rule can take the form of a table, a graph, a symbolic expression, or a description using words. As you work through questions 3 and 4, remember the key concept that f of x represents the value of an output quantity. And always remember that we can work with quantities mathematically. In other words, we can add, subtract, multiply, or divide f of x with any other quantity. Or you could use this quantity f of x as an input into another function. With this in mind, now answer question 3 in Module 3, Investigation 4. Note that in Part A, you are asked to define a function f in terms of t. Also, in Part B, you are asked to define a function g in terms of t. For an added challenge, in Part A, define a function m that determines Michael's distance traveled in terms of t, and define another function c that determines Cameron's distance traveled in terms of t, and then see if you can define function f in terms of the functions m and c. In a similar way, for Part B, see if you can define the function g in terms of the function f. Table 4 provides you with an opportunity to think more about using the value of the output of one function as the value of the input into another function. Try your hand at making sense of the notation in question 4 using the table to the right as the rule for functions f and g. This table provides the value of the output for these functions when the input for the function is what is given in the x column. Answer these questions and briefly write down how you reasoned to determine your answer for each part. Submit your answers to all parts of questions 3 and 4 in Module 3 Investigation 4 using your instructor's preferred method by the time and date that your instructor has identified.